Usually when we talk about making a massive improvement to like a really complex system, there's this assumption that a complete overhaul is required.
Right. Yeah, like you have to just tear the whole thing down.
Exactly, tear the entire architecture down to the studs, pour a completely new foundation, and just, well, start from scratch.
We definitely have a systemic bias toward that kind of sweeping, destructive change.
Totally.
I mean, the tech industry in particular just loves the idea of the rewrite. We kind of assume that deeply embedded problems demand these enormous, dramatic solutions.
But when you actually look at the trenches of software architecture, the most profound improvements to maintainability don't come from tearing down the house at all.
No, they really don't.
They come from something as localized as, changing the labels on the kitchen drawers so you don't cut your hand reaching for a spoon.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to explore a seemingly tiny, highly specific coding shift that actually holds a massive lesson about clarity, organization, and system design.
Yeah, it's a really perfect case study.
Right. So the source material we're looking at today is a short but incredibly dense journal entry from a programmer named Ang. It's titled Notes on Haskell Programming, specifically Part 166. And it was posted on June 20th, 2026.
Which, by the way, making it to Part 166 of a programming journal.
I know, right? It shows serious methodical dedication. You have to be deeply invested to get to 166.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core theme today is how Ang finally transitioned away from a really common coding habit, which is deliberately hiding functions from the default library,
Right.
and instead moving to something called qualified imports.
Yeah. And to really ground this for you, we are going to be looking closely at a specific, a before and after snapshot of the code.
Because it's not just about what changed, right?
Exactly. It's about why it matters for readability. We need to see how removing a few specific elements instantly reduces visual noise.
Okay, so let's set up the context. What is the baseline of Ang's problem here?
Right. So in Haskell, there's a default library called Prelude.
Prelude, okay.
Yeah. It's just automatically there in every module, providing all your standard functions right out of the box.
Like having a basic English dictionary preloaded in your brain.
Exactly. You don't have to define basic math or list manipulation.
Yeah.
But Ang was importing another module into the project called data.text.lazy.
Okay, and I'm guessing that caused some friction.
It did. It caused what we call namespace conflicts or function name collisions.
Basically a collision.
Yeah.
So to explain this without getting bogged down in jargon, it's kind of like, imagine being in a crowded room, right?
Okay.
And the default rule in this room is that everyone named John will respond if you yell John.
Right. Yeah, that's Prelude.
Exactly. But then you invite a totally new group of people into the room, which is the data.text.lazy module. And that new group also has, like, several guys named John.
Oh, yeah. Chaos ensues.
Total chaos. If you yell John now, you have a collision. The system has no idea which John you want.
That's a perfect analogy. And the specific functions causing this headache for Ang were pretty common ones.
Which ones?
Well, specifically drop, length, take, and words.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those are really common.
Right. They exist in both Prelude and in data.text.lazy. So the compiler just throws a hard stop. It doesn't have the context to guess which one you mean.
So Ang had to do something about it. How was Ang initially handling this collision in the before snapshot?
So Ang relied on a fairly standard workaround. The old code explicitly imported specific functions from data.text.lazy like strip and unpack.
Okay.
And then Ang added a specific command at the top, import prelude hiding, drop, length, take, words.
Wait, isn't that a perfectly fine solution?
Right.
I mean, you just put a do not enter sign on the default functions you don't want, right? Why did Ang feel the need to change this? Isn't it just easier to hide things once at the top of the file?
You'd think so. But what's fascinating here is what Ang noted in the journal. Ang realized this hiding method actually created a lot of additional complexity.
Really? How so?
Because it required maintaining a mental list of exactly what was hidden from the default library just to make the new imports work.
Oh, I see. So you're reading down on, like, line 300.
Right.
And you see the word length, and you have to pause and mentally cross-reference it with that hidden list at the top.
Exactly. You're holding negative space in your head. It completely shatters your ability to just read a function and understand what it does locally.
That mental clutter sounds exhausting at scale.
It is.
So because of that mental clutter, Ang makes the big switch to the after state. Let's look at that diff, the actual minus and plus signs in the code.
Yeah, so Ang rips out that hiding clause entirely.
Just deletes it.
Gone. Instead, Ang moves to qualified imports. Rather than listing every single function or hiding Prelude's default, Ang simply writes import data.text.lazy, qualified as TL.
Wait, qualified as TL, so just assigning it a two-letter alias. So Eng shared a specific block of code to prove this point, right? A function called summarize.
Yeah, summarize. It basically takes a chunk of text and turns it into a standard string.
Right, so in the old code, the hiding version, the logic looked like this. Len is less than or equal to 20 equals unpack txt. And right below it, len equals length txt.
Which looks clean visually.
Visually, yes. But here's where it gets really interesting. In the new code, those exact lines become tl.unpackTxt and tl.lengthTxt.
Yeah.
Now, every time Ang uses a function from that specific lazy library, it has a tl dot right in front of it.
Which is such a powerful mechanism. You don't have to scroll to the top of the file to figure out where length is coming from.
But why does this really matter so much? Like, I get the mechanics of the code change, but what is the real philosophical takeaway here?
Well, it's about the trade-off between brevity and readability.
Okay, yeah. Like, it's the difference between blindly reaching into a massive, completely unorganized toolbox hoping you grab the right wrench versus having a perfectly labeled drawer-like, the TL drawer, where you know exactly where the tool came from the second you look at it.
That's spot on.
Mm.
And Ang's exact conclusions in the journal support that. Ang wrote that this approach provided a cleaner namespace without hiding default functions.
A cleaner namespace.
Yeah. And Ang explicitly stated it improves readability because it is, quote, immediately obvious which function belongs to which module.
Immediately obvious. I mean, that's the dream, right?
It really is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, especially when you consider Ang is on part 166 of this project.
Yeah, that's a massive code base by that point.
Exactly. In complex systems, making things explicit rather than implicit saves just massive amounts of cognitive load for the future reader of that code.
Or even just for yourself, like 6 months down the line when you've forgotten how it works.
Oh, absolutely. Optimizing for the reader over the writer is the mark of a really mature system.
So to summarize the journey we just went on, we went from colliding names and totally chaotic namespaces to putting like band-aids on the default library by hiding things. And finally, we arrived at a mature, perfectly labeled system using qualified imports.
Yeah. And while the changes in Ang's diff were literally described as small, the impact on the system's readability is profound.
It really is. So to wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Go for it.
Think about your own digital workspaces, you know, your file systems, your project folders, or even your daily routines.
That's a good one.
How often do you accept a cluttered, colliding default state, applying messy workarounds to hide the things that annoy you, instead of simply stepping back, qualifying your tools, and labeling exactly where everything belongs?
Sometimes the best upgrade isn't a new system. It's just organizing the one you have.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Catch you next time.